Hello, welcome. There I am. Hi, everyone. Kyla Rae here, your host of the Coaching Shop. Thank you so much for coming to our first episode in 2026. I hope you all had a very happy New Year holiday season. Tonight is I've been really excited for tonight because we have probably one of the most unique topics that we've had so far on the coaching shop. Tonight, we're going to sit down with Sean Imler. Here he is. Hi, Sean. And Sean draws on Peruvian Andean wisdom, ancient Inca cosmology, and also like more modern perspectives that bridge kind of this indigenous wisdom with modern science. And so we're going to explore tonight's topic, which is rooted in reciprocity, when spirit speaks between coach and client. So we'll see where the conversation takes us. For the most part, we're going to be looking at how do we as coaches become conduits for wisdom? So not like pulling from our notes or clever things that we read that day, but a deeper guidance that arises and comes through us, right? And this is a conversation that psychology often avoids. So, spirit, creation, the living intelligence of life itself, right? And this is something indigenous traditions really have a bigger focus on than I think we do, especially in the Western Hemisphere, but in modern society in general. And this idea of maintaining and sustaining some form of balance and harmony in human relationships. So that is our topic tonight. Remember to say hello in the chat. Tell us where you're from, who you are. I see lots of grads in the room already. Welcome, welcome. A couple names I don't recognize. So say hello, introduce yourself, and thanks for being a part of Ideal Coaching Global's community. In the chat tonight, I also want you to ask questions. If you have some insights you want to share, please share those insights and tell us if something's really connecting with you. So we know to go deeper on that line, right? All right, so I'm going to introduce our guest speaker. Hello and welcome.
Thank you. Good to see you here, Kyla. Thank you. I just like listening to you talk, actually. I, I remember when we did our first interview together when I was first coming into Ideal Coaching, and I was like, God, this person's really cool.
Feel the same. Hmm.
So where do we go? Gosh, while you were talking, there's so many things like percolating in my brain, but where do you want this to go?
Well, I was thinking, and when you and I were in conversation a couple weeks ago, reciprocity kept coming up over and over
Mm,
and over again. And that's
mm,
why we kind of decided that should be our topic for
mm,
tonight.
mm,
So I feel like reciprocity, we have kind of a modern understanding of what it is. And I think it would be great if you grounded us in the context of this indigenous traditions that you come from.
mm.
What is reciprocity in the context for tonight?
Yeah. So what comes up for me while you're mentioning that, uh, I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday about multicultural approaches to being a human being. And in the West, we have a very strong identification with self. And the thing that we strive for in the West is our individuality and uh, finding our place in the world and establishing goals and conquering them and independence and so much of our identity is based on some of those things. And then if you look at some other cultures, especially in the East, in the Orient, what was called the Orient at one time, uh, it's community. And if you were to step out and be an individual, you would be ostracized. Uh, when when two people introduce each other to themselves, they ask, "How is your family?" Not "How are you?" Right?
Mm.
So the way that we approach things in the West is not how we approach things all over. In fact, it's a very Western centric point of view that we tend to impose upon other cultures, other peoples. So if you look at the family unit as being more important than the individual unit, a lot of the shamanic traditions come from that place, especially in Central and South America. So our question actually, who is an individual? Who are we? And what is the self? That definition changes. And so, in order to, I think, be more of a human being of the planet, you have to recognize that we are in a group consciousness. Jung talked a lot about it, and making that leap from the individual I into the we is a really important part of how you position the self in everything that you do. And the self isn't going to go away. It's just a matter of how you define it, how you look at it, where you place it. And when you're working with another human being on a one-on-one or a one-to-many level, you are working in a we situation. And I always say that when you step into a room as a practitioner with somebody that needs your assistance, there's three things happening in the room. There's your sense of self. There's what you bring to your body of knowledge, your practice at being in relationship with others. Then there's the person sitting in front of you, and they're doing the exact same thing. They're assessing who they are and what do they want to reveal to this practitioner, and and is it safe for them to go into details about their personal lives that they would not necessarily do? And even that's a very cultural thing, right? In the West, we have a tendency to be like, oh yeah, let me just spill my guts to you because you're an authority. But if you go into other cultures, African cultures, Asian cultures, they don't do that. You would only do that with somebody that maybe you had spent the last 20 years in intimate relationship with. And so usually, and I get a lot of this because I have worked in the Bay Area for so many years where we have people from all over the world. You have to take into consideration that the person sitting across from you has this position. They don't know whether they can trust you or they should trust you. They don't know what is appropriate for divulging information. And that is very much a part of who they are as the second unit. The third unit is the relationship between you and this other person. And the minute that you start to open up a dialogue with somebody, you create this third unit. And you're sitting in a field of ideas, of culture, of background, of history, of language, and all these things are percolating in this space. And you have to be aware enough to navigate all of those things at one time. I think that you get a lot of that from experience and you get a lot of that from your life background. And so there's always a person that's appropriate to be sitting across from you because of the field that we generate together and how deeply you are able to immerse yourself in that field. And also in that field is what I would call spirit. Because now, if you're a practitioner that chooses to get yourself out of the way so that something greater can come through you to create and manifest something on behalf of the person sitting in front of you, spirit is engaged. And they're engaged in that field. And that's the intersection because you don't impose spirit upon that other person. You may not even have a conversation about spirit with that other person.
Right.
It's that you are taking responsibility for the way that you're contributing to that third unit, that space between you. For me, spirit always present, and my prayer is always please help me get out of the way. I always say, open my mind, open my voice, and open my heart so that what needs to come through can come through. Because I want that person that's sitting in front of me to get what they came for. But I don't really know what that is, and I don't know how much they're going to withhold from me. So all I can do is just be present and ask Spirit to be the intermediary and tell me, is there anything that I don't know that you would like me to know that helps guide this conversation? In fact, so I don't do just coaching, I do healing work. And when I set up, like I go through, about 5 minutes of preparation before I even engage with somebody on a healing level. And I always tell the person, okay, just put yourself into a state of receptivity for the duration of this session and give me a moment to drop in. But in that drop in process, it's a really important part. Toward the end of that process, I engage my higher self. And I ask my higher self to engage with that person's higher self. Because the dialogue's really happening at that level. From my point of view, that's where the dialogue's happening. And when I say dialogue, I'm talking about mind, full body, full brain, all of the emotions, the biofield that surrounds it. It's the mind is all of those things. And I'm saying, please, higher self, engage with this person's higher self and let us know where we need to go. Because that person's inner voice is going to tell them, hey, tell Sean about that thing. Or, hey, you're holding back a little bit. Like, just relax, let go, right? And that's going to happen because their higher self is communicating with mine. And they've established some sort of connection. I don't know what it is, but I receive information from that relationship. So that's also taking place in that space, that unit, that third unit between the two of us. And I just need to listen. I need to be in that. So if ever there was a topic of reciprocity, it's happening on three levels simultaneously, not just two. It's not just between me and the client. It's between me and the space and spirit and my higher self and their higher self. There's so much going on. And totally getting yourself out of the way to be the conduit is really the first step. Like, because, no matter what, we always bring ourselves to the session. And that self is, well, it's got a lot of history, it's got conditioning, and you can work for a lifetime at it, but you never know what you don't know. And so, life is a full-time project that you start when you're born, end when you leave this life and this body. And in between, you still drag a lot of your stuff along with you, even if you're aware of it or not aware of it. So I really want to make sure, can I just be as open and fluid as possible? Because I never know if, like, I'm going to get triggered by something that they say. Oh, that reminds me of that thing that happened when I was a child. Oh, Lord, what am I going to do with that? But it's happening for a reason because of the reciprocity, right? If somebody comes into my office and they trigger something from my childhood, I'm like, oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, how else would I have gotten to this? And
Hmm.
and I don't know. In psychology, there's kind of this history of putting oneself on a pedestal, like you command this situation and you have to be perfect. And I am more into the kind of integral psychological approach to things where there's so much going on. I don't ever want to be like the authority. I mean, maybe I am in some regards, but that's not the role that I play. I play the, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? And if I get the opportunity to heal something, oh my gosh, thank you so much for allowing that to take place. Because how else would I get to it? It's funny because you have these clients that come in and they'll have the weirdest, most off the wall thing. And you're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, how else does that happen, right? Except like in the
Yeah.
engagement of like coaching work or healing work. So anyway, that's my first thought at what you said.
Whew. Well, thank you for that. I mean, you touched on so many things here. And one thing I really appreciated is because I know a lot of coaches on this call are listening to this call, they don't have healing practices, right? But in a way, we can all bring this into our practice without marketing ourselves that way or even telling someone on the line that's what we're doing. So, a couple weeks ago we had a executive coach on the call, right? And I think I really like this idea of, because when I think of my own sessions, I never say, "Ooh, Spirit just gave me a question," right? But I know when I'm really dropped in, and I know when I'm out of the way, and these questions just seem to, a question will come to me, and it's like, "Yep, that's the one," right? And sometimes I have no idea why I'm asking it, but I know I'm supposed to ask it, right? So that kind of like connection to this third entity, I think is really important for all coaches, whether we call it spirit or guidance or God or whatever it is. But this sense of getting out of the way. So I love that. I also, when I'm listening to you, this feeling of belonging to something comes up. You said that we're born into this. Um, and and I don't think about it that way a lot. Like I was born into this space where spirit is, and all of us, we kind of are in this space. I know sometimes we just call that like we don't live on the earth, we live in the earth, right? Like we're a part of all of this. And so it's not that we enter into relationship with someone else, we enter into relationship with spirit, we're born into it. And reciprocity acknowledges that existence itself as participation.
Yeah. Yeah, it made me think, like, going back to your former statement about uh, getting out of the way. The first thing that came up for me was like, how do you get out of the way? And having a really clear intention, I think, is really important. Um, we may just enter into a conversation with somebody in a session without really stating what the terms are. Not
Mm.
necessarily to the person, although that could be part of it. Um, but I was listening to a session, a psychological therapeutic session with somebody, and I was noticing that the practitioner was really making all of these statements about what this session was. She was setting the tone for what the person that was sitting across from her could expect from the session. And I thought, that's really good to do. Maybe not always. Maybe there's something else, which is what is showing up for this person that you're sitting across from? Who are you being? How did you enter the room? How did you set the tone? What did you do to engage the energy of the space? Do you own your space? Are you just occupying it? Who are you before you enter into that session? And does that person feel it? Do they are they aware of what's happening with the space energetically? Um, if you and it's not you could have like a horrible phone call just before a session, like maybe you get some bad news or something, but then what? Do you bring that into the space? How do you adjust yourself? What do you know about yourself that helps to create the environment that allows that person that's sitting across from you to just feel trust, to
Mm.
feel care, to feel empathy, to feel love from you? And to me, that's what it's about, because getting out of the way is I took everything from 30 seconds ago and I just put it away somewhere. Or I know that something's going to come into this session. Would you tell a client about that? You wouldn't believe what just happened to me. And
Mm.
and and if you come to the session with this authentic part of you and say, just wanted you to know this is where I'm at right now, does that person immediately feel like they're with another human being? that they can just open up to because you just opened up to them, some maybe a stranger. So there's a lot of ways in which we choose to get out of the way, and I think a lot of it is about being able to intuit what is happening with that person. And how do you get there? What informs your intuition? Can you feel or sense from this person that they really need to have your authentic nature presented to them in order for them to be able to open up? Do they need somebody that they feel is an authority in the topic that they're going to present to you? And they feel comfortable on an intellectual level that you know where to navigate the issue that they've brought to you. Um, is it somewhere in between there? Do they need to connect to you on an emotional level? Do they need to connect to you on a spiritual level? How do you gauge this? What do you do to present yourself to having some insight or intuition about what's going to happen? And I believe that all takes place in that space. So when you start a session, there's a lot of things that go into it. And part of getting out of the way is allowing your intuitive guidance to speak to you to know where to go. But you have to have a relationship with that intuition. Just like if you were going to have a spiritual conversation with somebody, you would need to have a relationship with spirit that allowed you to be able to engage in that conversation in the way that it needs to take place. So how do you open yourself up to whatever it is, whether you call it spirit, whether you call it a spirit guide, whether you call it your higher self, whether you call it your superconscious, whether you call it something angelic, whether you call it earth, whether you call it a spirit of the land. Uh, it's a choice that someone makes when they're going to be a practitioner. They have to open up to something. Even if it's their own intellect, there's something greater that might need to come through. And that's what steers the intellect to be able to engage with your capacity for language and formulating ideas that you're going to speak through your mouth. I I think that probably everybody, even atheists, know that there's something occurring at times that they don't expect. And there are lots of ways to say what it is. I just tend to say it's spirit. And when I say it's spirit, it could be earth, it could be source, it could be something in between. I always think that everything needs to be stepped down in vibration to be able to reach our brains and reach the body mind. So when I look at source, I always think that source gets stepped down in frequency to a place that we can ingest it and do something with it. And so to your second comment about what the planet actually is, um, yeah, we're all totally immersed in the energy of what I would consider to be the greatest being in our solar system, which is the Earth,
Mm.
because we were all born of her. She gives us the opportunity for carbon-based life to take form, and it's consciousness that comes into that carbon-based form that gives it intelligence, that gives it a program, right? Every living being, uh, whether it's a cloud or it's a newt or it's a horse, everything has an instruction set, and it's because Mother Earth is able to hold the container for that instruction set to come through consciousness and to give consciousness to every living being so that it can follow its instruction set. Um, she's the greatest being, and our relationship with her is part of, for me, it's part of what I'm opening up to. So I'll give you another little secret. Before I see my clients, um, I take a pinch of tobacco out and I find a tree somewhere because trees have roots. I try and find the tallest tree because trees have an equal distance of roots as the distance from the ground to the sky. So I know I'm going deep into the earth when I'm with a tall tree, but I put my hand on it and I pray. And what I'm praying for is, hey, spirits of this land, um, some of you have been paved over, and some of you have um, been built on, and thank you for giving humans your space to occupy. For those of you that would like to come help me with this client or these clients that I'm going to be seeing in the next day or 2 or 3 days, whatever, please help me. I'm asking for your ability to bring healing, to bring insight to me so that I can bring healing to the person I'm going to be working with. And to me, to be honest with you, it's always about healing. You know, healing is it's the definition of change, right? It doesn't matter whether I'm doing energetic healing work with somebody or I'm just having a conversation with somebody. To me, it's all about healing. Healing is change, and somebody's coming to me because something in their life isn't working the way that it would be if it were optimally functioning. And I need to help that person understand what it is and bring a metamorphosis to it, a transformation to it. I don't believe that it is an obstacle in the sake of just standing in the way. I believe that it's a lesson, it's an opportunity, and it's presenting itself as something to relate to overcome, to change, to challenge, because that is how we grow here on planet Earth. We grow through adversity, running up against something that we don't have the answer to, um, running up against an environment or running up against an experience, a trauma, an event that we don't have the capacity to alter, to move past, to go beyond. And the healing is in the relationship to that thing and coming into harmony with it because it is vibration. So it's almost like, if you're sitting at a piano, um, they have like the devil's chord is the diminished fifth chord. So you have the one, the flat three, and the flat five. And the church always said, don't use that chord ever because it's the devil's chord. The reason they felt that way is because it's so disharmonious. But that's what happens with us, right? We have disharmonious thoughts. We have disharmonious energy in our bodies from trauma, from damage. And we're trying to change that diminished fifth into a beautiful, harmonious, harmonized chord that feels that we have a relationship with. And to me, we don't wipe out the thing that's the challenge. We come into relationship with it. And that's back to the idea of reciprocity, right? We come into a reciprocal relationship with harmonizing with it, like the one and the five or the octave, if the musicians know what I'm talking about. It comes into beauty. It sounds like a choir of angels instead of uh, like the jackhammer outside, right? That's what's happening within our bodies and with our brains. And so we're just coming into harmony. That's reciprocity. Now the two can feed off of each other. Oh, I know my limitation now. Oh, I understand that thing that was standing in my way. And I understand why. Because it gave me the capacity to learn this particular skill. Or it gave me the ability to communicate in this new way with this person that I had this difficult relationship with. And now we've come into harmony through our conversation. So, okay, I think I'm done.
Yes, I'm loving this. And something that I want to bring in, one of our alumni said, Laura's on. Hi, Laura. So she brings in this word alchemy
Hmm.
and this idea that reciprocity, which it could come across as transactional, right? Give, take. But instead, I like this word alchemy that we're giving, as we give and receive, we're creating something new, right? It's like we're creating a new song. And there's different musicians in the room, me, the client, the space. Um, the earth, right? And we're all playing these notes and we're creating every session, we're creating a new song together, a new dance together.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's funny too because you always know when you're not in harmony with somebody. You know, even in a session, like if you've ever had one of those sessions where uh, sometimes you get these people that are incredibly intellectual and they've got a kind of whole storehouse of the latest psychological buzzwords, and you know they throw these things at you, and you're like, uh, well, I didn't read that book, or I didn't listen to that YouTube video. Um, so can you tell me what you're really talking about so I can kind of really engage with you around the conversation about how this shows up in your life? And now I can be with you. Um, and and then sometimes you have the challenges, the ones that have great expectations about what's going to happen because you are the authority. They've already put you on the pedestal before they even got there. And then you're like, wait, hold on. I'm just human. Um, and we could create some alchemy together. Um, but let's get to know each other. And let me tell you who I actually am as a human being. I can give you some of my background, but you know, I'm sensitive. Um, I think of everything in terms of spirituality. I had these types of experiences on the way here today. So I'm human just like you. So there are a lot of things that go into creating that relationship. And that's where I was, you know, going back to what I said earlier about intuiting what needs to happen. And it always goes to getting out of the way, getting out of your own way, to allow insight to show up, to allow spirit to speak to you. So, in the study of the brain, the left and right hemispheres, uh, what they usually talk about is that the left hemisphere of the brain, I always call it like the past and the future. It doesn't really sit much in the now. It kind of looks at previous experiences and it gauges everything about what could be in the moment based on what happened before, but it's always adulterated by where we intend to go. We're always thinking about what is the next thing, what is the goals that are on my plate, um, where am I supposed to be, what is my relationship with the future, am I harmonized with it, am I in fear of it? Um, the left brain is the storehouse of knowledge. So our abstract concepts of the world we fill with bits of information that we pick up, whether it's from a book that we read, from a conversation that we had, and the entire history of all of that information sits in left brain consciousness. The right hemisphere of the brain is the moment of now. It is comfortable with chaos. It doesn't need organization. I love being in that place. Like when I enter a room, I'm always like, yeah, let's go into the right hemisphere. Like I love chaos. Like how, not that I don't love structure, but I'm like, this is so much more potent because I don't know what's going to happen, and I love being in the unknown. However, to really be balanced, you have to have a combination of the two, right? They always say that genius arises from the from the right hemisphere of the brain and then is introduced to the left hemisphere of the brain because genius sits in chaos. It wants to look at what is happening right now in this moment that I don't know about and then relate it to, okay, what is the body of knowledge that I have that I can relate this to, and then I can put it all into words, and then I can present it to a person or a group of people. So being comfortable with the unknown is an incredibly important part of how you access your intuition, of how you gain insight into the situation and the field that you're creating with another person or group of people. You have to be comfortable with the unknown. And that is the difference between somebody that utilizes their storehouse of information in a conversation because they're always going to pull from previously discovered information, whether that was through a class they took or through something that Betty Spruill said, right? The unknown, though, has to be embodied. You have to be able to sit in that space. and you have to be comfortable with chaos. I think that's it's one of the things that happens. I don't know how I'm going to go into this tangent, but hallucinogens. When people use psychedelics, it's when you're comfortable with the unknown. Those people have really easy experiences with psychedelics. It's the people that have been grasping and holding on to the tangible that often have the biggest hurdle to overcome to allow the experience of psychedelics to actually stir up something and to engage with it. Because if you're holding on so tightly to what you know, if you're holding on so tightly to the past, if you're holding on so tightly to your body of knowledge, when this thing comes in, this molecular experience occurs in your body, it's going to disrupt things. And if you aren't comfortable with the unknown and with disruption, it's going to rock you. Because now that body of information, the library of information that you normally source from, it crumbles. And all of those things from the past, especially the ones that you've been clinging on to as your reality, they're all going to come rushing in and flooding you all at once. And that's why people sometimes get overwhelmed. And I'll speak to that as well, that uh, if you've done any sort of psychedelic experience and haven't had anybody to follow up on that experience with over the following 2, 3, 4 weeks, often people get thrown into a tailspin because so much of the past has been brought forward that they can't even sort through it. And the psychedelic experience can be really traumatic when it brings up all of this stuff and you have no idea what to do with it because it's sitting in your body, it's sitting in your brain, and now everything's kind of been stirred up and disrupted, and it has no opportunity to settle. So, and it's interesting that I've had a number of people that have come to me to try and sort out their psychedelic experiences because they now have all these things that have been awakened, and they're coming into the field that you're creating with this other person, and it can be really disruptive. Now you've got a disrupted field, and you have to be able to engage in their energy that they're feeding into that field, as well as embodying your own intuition as a way to navigate how to piece this whole thing together, how to put it back into place, like how to rearrange the building blocks in a way that they can move forward in a constructive way in their lives. So that was the thing that actually struck me about the word alchemy because it's chemical, right?
Mm.
So anyway, I think I'm done with that.
So you've brought up a word a couple of times now, and that's intuition.
Mm,
It's kind of been woven through everything you just said.
mm.
Um, so how do we begin to strengthen our intuition and discern when our tuition is trying to, tell us something?
Yeah, that's a really big conversation. Um, my this is not a plug. I'm just saying my Living a Sacred Life course, which is a course in empathy, meditation, shamanism, spirit contact. This is where I start because it's so important. Uh, there are clairvoyant properties that exist within us. They're what I call the subtle senses. So our physical senses, sight, touch, taste, feeling, and smell, have subtle elements to them, and those are the springboards for our intuition. So um, some people see on their inner screen, some people hear words or construct sentences on their inner screen. Some people have awakenings in their body that tell them certain things are going on. Some people get tastes in their mouths, and some people even smell things. So um, each of those are the intuitive faculty operating within us. And it's important to develop the skill to discern which is the one that works most for you. In NLP, they'll teach you that most people are mostly sight oriented. I think they say like percent of the population is sight oriented. And when you ask them a question or you're having a dialogue with them, they're seeing pictures in their minds. But then also, there's a large percentage of the population, probably another 20 to 25%, that's very feeling oriented. And then there's the audial people. And very few people actually utilize taste and smell. But it's interesting, smell is the one sense that actually passes the blood-brain barrier. So, it's interesting that people, if you tell them to go back to a childhood smell, often people can smell in their memory the smell of their grandparents or the smell of their first dog or cat or the smell of the favorite thing that their mom or dad used to cook. And it brings back an emotion along with it. So that sense of what speaks to your intuition, um, it's important to dialogue with, to know how to access. I believe that uh, prolonged periods of meditation really awaken the subtle sense, and I always encourage people to have a regular practice because it's the state of quiet, of stillness within oneself that we start to engage with the subtle senses. And there are probably other ways to get there, but I know that that one works, and I know that it's incredibly effective. And it's really because you can't engage your intuition unless there's a stillness in your mind. That is where it starts. Intuition does not come to a busy body, a busy mind, where that left brain thinking about the past and thinking about the future. It comes to the right brain the moment of now. And you have to be quiet to be in the moment of now. You don't get quiet following your brain's thoughts, right? In fact, the first thing that they'll tell you in yoga, meditation, uh, sports, they'll say, shut up, right? Shut up and just observe those thoughts, right? Don't
Mhm.
engage with them. Don't let them take you on the roller coaster because they will. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, I'm really grateful that my brain produces thoughts. I couldn't be a human being without it, right? So I don't admonish the fact that it doesn't shut up, but I just don't engage with it when I don't need to. So knowing how you experience intuition, I know for myself. I call it like the truth monitor for me. So when I hear truth, I get this tingling sensation that runs across my chest and over into my left shoulder. Probably also the same place that I would feel a stroke.
Oh
so
no.
it's so it's probably heart related, right?
Okay.
It's probably my sense of feeling is connected to my heart, my capacity for love. And so when I hear a truth, my truth monitor goes, you know, and it happens when I'm sitting with a client. In fact, it just happened the other day. I was having a session with a client, and he said something. I said, I just wanted to let you know, my truth monitor just went off. So what you're saying is true. I know it because it happened at a completely different level. Like it happened at my body level. My brain wasn't thinking about what you were saying. My body's responding. So I know that there's a truth happening there. Um, I'll get insight in all kinds of ways. I don't expect it. I don't call myself psychic, but if I'm doing, let's say, some healing work with somebody, I'm engaging with their entire body mind complex. Um, I get all kinds of things that flood in, past life memories of the person, um, insight about someone's parents, and something else that I'll speak to that you were talking about last time, which is how do you engage with a person? And I never say to somebody, "Oh, I know that this thing is happening for you." It's a very congenial, "Hey, I'm getting this insight. I just want to check in with you. Um, I think it might be this," and I'll say, a couple sentences about this insight that I'm getting, and I'll just say, "What do you think about that? Do you think that might be true for you, or what comes up for you when I say that?" And it's not. I have no idea what the true answer is to all things. I only know that I got this little bit of insight, but it could be my previous conditioning. Like, I don't know if they're touching on something that's coming from my
Right.
subconscious mind. And I can own that. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. But what do you think might be happening? And I tell you, when you approach something like that, 95% of the time it's spot on, and the other 5% they're like, nope, that's wrong. But you know what it is? It's this.
Right.
It never fails, ever, ever, ever fails. So it's a matter of like, did I hear a word that came in? Did I string together a bunch of words? Was it even like a phrase from a book or something? Um, did I see a picture? And in some people really gravitate to one particular sense. I tend to be really homogenous when it comes to the senses. I'll let things come in anyway. And I don't even know if it's coming from me or if it's coming from the other person or it's coming from spirit, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. Not important.
That's the alchemy.
That's the alchemy. Yeah. So, what if there's anything else I wanted to say on that topic? Hmm. No, nothing's coming through at the moment.
Hmm. No, it's really interesting because there's been times in my life where, yeah, I'm learning to use that your own truth meter. And I think we all have one of these,
Hmm.
but tapping into that and learning to use it. I have people who ask me all the time. I'm in Colorado right now at my parents' house, but I live in the Caribbean. I live in the Southern Caribbean of Costa Rica. And people will often ask me, why did you why'd you pick here? Like, why'd you, of all the places in the world, it's so hard to get here, like all these different things, why here? And I'll tell them, like, I don't know if it was me that chose. Um, I was on an adventure, which I'm a traveler, been on lots of adventures, and I was driving through this tiny little town, little beach town. And I just heard a voice, and the voice said, I'm going to live here one day. And the knowingness that came with the voice, it wasn't a wish, it wasn't a hope, it wasn't oh, that's an interesting idea. It was like dropped into me in such a way that I knew that was true. And that was, 16 years ago, maybe. And it's been uh, my home, one of my homes. I mean, Colorado will always be my birth home, but it's been my second home ever since. And I think back to that moment a lot because it feels like such a gift when that intuition drops in. And so how to like strengthen that is such an interesting conversation with for me, and how to not just strengthen it for myself, but help my clients also start to engage with their intuition, right? And find truth for themselves.
Yeah. It makes me think of the energy of curiosity.
Mm.
I think, it's interesting. I was talking to a psychology professor, and we were talking about studies done on empathy, and what they found was that practitioners can be right out of school, or they can have been a practitioner for 30 years. The number one thing that any practitioner brings to a session is empathy. It is the most transformative relationship element that we can possibly develop. And it really, I think, the backbone of empathy um, is curiosity. Because you're not really self focused when you're curious. Your attention is on something outside of you. And so, whether you're meditating constantly or not, I believe that curiosity gives you the right mindset to be navigating the world that will lead you to intuition, that will lead you to empathy, simply because you're not self focused.
Hmm. I love that. Curiosity. It feels really central to, I think every important thing that's come into my life came out of me being curious.
Hmm. Yeah.
Hmm. So, we're getting close to time here. I can't believe that. It just flew by. Any questions from our audience? We're welcome to take. Any insights? What have you been connecting with during this conversation? Feel free to share. And otherwise, Sean, any closing notes for us today? Anything you want to leave us with?
Hmm. Um, the thing that's coming up for me right now is, I got this really strong message just recently that that people that are doing this kind of work with others, we really, this is the era for a huge shift, a huge transformation on this planet, and we really need to be asking the question, what is being asked of me as a human being, as a spiritual being? What is being asked of me, and to show up to that. As there's so much information out in the world, so much knowledge, and it's so easy to get a hold of it like never before. But what do you do as a human being to present yourself to the world? More than just a body of knowledge, more than just a body of information, but as a conduit for love, a conduit for insight, a conduit for compassion, a conduit for empathy, a conduit for stillness. Like, what is being asked of us at this time? I think, you know, back to what I was saying about curiosity, it's part of that. It's like, what is being asked of me? Like, I can just get out of my way and just be whatever is being asked of me. And how do you engage that? Like, how do you wake up in the morning and say, hey, what's being asked of me today? Where do I need to show up? Not where you think you need to show up. Like, if we're the children of this beautiful planet that's spinning, hurtling at 600,000 miles per hour through space, like, what do you need, Mother Earth? What do you need, humanity? Like, that should be the question at this point. Because, more knowledge and more information is really not where it's at. Now we've got AI, it'll take care of all that for us. But AI is not human. It doesn't have the capacity to breathe love into humanity. And so that would be my last thing. What happens when you wake up in the morning? What's the question you're asking?
Hmm. It's so powerful and I often have a difficult time articulating what Ideal Coaching Global is and what our mission is because it's so much deeper than getting a certification as a coach. And going through the ICF check boxes and all these things, which I know you relate to me on.
Mm-hmm.
There's something so much deeper, and this work is about really connecting to who I am as a human being and what I have to give to the world and create with the world, this idea of co-creation. And it's you just articulated it so beautifully. So thank you.
Mm. Oh,
All right. Well, I'm getting some amens from our audience. It
mhm.
was great to see you all tonight. Remember, we have a course coming up in February. If you're interested, my right hand lady, Mitch, is going to put a link in the chat. And I do think that this is the time, right? The only time is now, but this is the time to really be expanding this work and being conscious of how we can continue to give and be in relationship uh, in a conversation of we versus me.
Yeah.
So, what is being asked of me? Yeah, I
Mhm.
love that. And it's been a joy to have you tonight. And thank you so much for being my friend and my colleague and joining us tonight with your wisdom.
Thank you. It was really wonderful to be here, and I'm so excited for you, Kyla.
Thank you. All right. Well, everyone have a wonderful night. We'll see you in 2 weeks for the next episode of the Coaching Shop. We're actually going to have founder Betty Spruill on to discuss the patterns that we live in, which I think will go really nicely with what we talked about today. So join us in 2 weeks. We'll see you then.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.